Hey class, here we are. It is Mr. Sailors, of course. Week 3, digital learning. How about that? Good times. Alrighty, let's get started with 1916. Probably the bloodiest, by far the bloodiest year of the Great War. Um, and you're going to learn why, of course, with two major battles. But I want to start with this picture, just about how messed up the military thinking is. I mean, look at this picture of these German lancers. All right. I mean, a lance versus a gun. I thought we got rid of this at Agincourt, but I guess not. And they're wearing gas masks. It's like the 14th century meeting the 20th century all together in one picture. And it just shows, I think, how messed up really the thinking is. And so it is just really a fascinating picture. Um, anywho, let's move on to 1916. We got a lot going on, but it really revolves around two battles. The Battle of Verdun, which is such a huge, important battle for the French. They study Verdun like we study Gettysburg. All right, you say Verdun, every French kid is going to know what you're talking about, and every Brit is going to know about the Battle of the Somme. We'll talk briefly about the naval battle of Jutland, one of the largest up to then, the largest naval battle in history. This will be usurped in World War II with Leyte Gulf. We're going to talk a little bit about the Russians and Romanians and things like that. But 1915, things ended not very well for the British. I mean, if you think about Gallipoli, 250,000 casualties. It was a disaster. Churchill is kicked out as head of the naval department. He's done. And you beget this thing. Now, remember, in 1915, it's an all volunteer army all the way through 1915. And you get something interesting called the White Feather Movement in England. The White Feather Movement is basically these girls, young girls, pretty girls, would walk around these towns with these white feathers. And if they saw a young lad who had not joined up yet, they would pin a white feather on their shirt, trying to embarrass them, to let everyone know this white feather meant surrender, cowardness. And this is going on. It's very humiliating. Imagine having this in school. Girls going up to people and pinning these white flowers, or white feathers, I'm sorry, on people to humiliate them, to stand them out. But still, the white feather movement wasn't enough, and in early 1916, they just start drafting folks into the army. They need more troops. The Brits do, of course. And so they meet and they decide the Germans really haven't had a major offensive since 1914, and they begin to plan one. The Allies begin to plan one along the Somme right here. But the Germans have something else up their sleeve. They have a new commander. His name is Falkenhayn. I mean, how German does he look? He looks so German, it's ridiculous. And Falkenhayn has a plan. And this is basically his plan right here. And remember this phrase for Verdun. Falkenhayn is going to bleed France white. He is going to take the strategic point called Verdun and just sit and just let France pour all of their men and resources into retaking it and just bleed them white. Bleed them out, all right, where they have no more blood to offer. And he feels like this is going to work. And it's quite an impressive battle. It's the longest battle of World War One. It was 299 days. To prepare for this, he does it very secretively. Falkenhayn built 5 new railways to bring up supplies, over 2.5 million shells, and to support 300,000 troops. The guns are camouflaged because of airplanes, and they have 150 German aircraft to stop any of the French pilots. On February 21st, it opens up all along this line. Right, you can see right here. Here's Verdun right there. All along this line, shells open up, and over the span of 6 days, you have 2 million shells landing all around here. There are two major forts. There are several forts around here that I want to talk about. Douaumont, which is right here, which is the main one, and Vaux. All right. There's others, of course, that you can see all throughout around Verdun. And basically, this pounding going on and on and on and on, all over this area for several days. And so when this shelling ends, out of the mist comes something kind of fascinating. Elite German troopers known as storm troopers. These stormtroopers have modern helmets. They kind of protect the back of their neck, and they have a nasty new weapon called the flamethrower that nobody's ever seen. The main focus is, of course, this fort that I want to talk about is Douaumont. It is the symbol of resistance in Verdun. And it's pretty interesting. This is an aerial view of Douaumont. Almost the whole fort is underground. You see the shape right here with a moat surrounding it. And you see a little bit above ground. Really, the only thing above ground was the guns, and they would poke out of here and fire a 155 millimeter shell, which is massive. This is Fort Douaumont from the air, and you see all the shell holes and the trenches that were built. Now, the sad thing is that on February 26th, the Germans, after almost 6 days, they capture this without firing a bullet. Basically, this scouting party of Germans worked their way around to Douaumont. A lot of the troops had left. Many of the French troops that stayed in Douaumont went underground to deal with all the shelling. And they go through this open door, capture some guys without firing a shot, and put them in a jail cell, basically. And so they take Douaumont after 5 days. It is humiliating. At Fort Vaux, they're fighting tooth and nail for this fort, and the commander at one point sends out a message. They're attacking us with shells and gas. We can barely hold on. This is our last pigeon. When you're relying on pigeons for your defense, that's never a good thing, right? Pigeons. And it was, of course, a carrier pigeon. And so Fort Vaux right here will be captured. Douaumont will be captured, and it's not good. You can see the farthest line that the Germans get is September 9th, 1916. And anyway, it's really terrible. But when they come out, right? German airplanes, when the stormtroopers come out, German airplanes fly over to see where the French points of resistance. And it doesn't matter how much shelling you do, you're not going to kill everybody. They never really learned this in World War One, but Frenchies live. They survive this shelling, and they come out. The stormtroopers are looking for weak points to really push this line, and you can see they really push it from here down to here pretty quickly. And so their attack is going to stall. A guy by the name of General Petain is put in charge of defending Verdun, and he says a famous phrase, "They shall not pass." I'm sure it sounds better in French. And Petain builds up his own meat grinder that battles the Germans, and basically it stalls. The German attack stalls. This is the farthest they get on September the 16th, but really not much more fighting. And the Frenchies, this is symbolic because they are resisting. Almost all troops in the French army will rotate through here at one point. To get to the front, you march at night through around these shell holes, and watch my OLH on no man's land, going through these shell holes that are larger, twice the size of swimming pools, filled with poison gas, dead bodies, rotting horse carcasses, and you fall in there and you're done. Your pack is going to weigh you down and basically drown you. Getting through to the front, half the French men are lost just getting to the front. Then they move at night, and all these forts up here are on the high ground, obviously, and it's all lit up with fire, right? It is Mordor, guys. It is Mordor if you're a Frenchie going to the front. As you move at night and it's all lit up with the firing and the shells bursting, it is Mordor. And he borrows "They shall not pass," remember, for the movie. And Mordor, he's in this, Tolkien is not in this battle. He's more north, but he's in World War One. He knows about this. And this is where I think you get a lot of Mordor from, is Verdun. Tell you the truth. It's pretty fascinating. Anyway, they fight. They do a major attack in May. The Frenchies do to try to take Dumont. It's humiliating pushback. At the same time, in May, so the Germans are inside with about 1,000 people in Dumont, and they're doing a cooking fire, and it catches some ammunition on fire, which is near some shells, and boom, almost kills every German inside. Over 896 Germans are killed in May. It won't be until October of 1916 that they're really able to take Dumont, and it was a huge moral victory for the French. But the only way they are able to take Dumont, Fort Dumont, that I'll show you right here and after the battle, is they're forcing an attack up north on the River Somme. And basically, this battle up here on the Somme River that you see, here is Verdun down here. Verdun is down here. The Somme is up here. Is basically one of the reasons the Germans lose this battle is they have to move troops from here to here to meet this threat from the north, basically. And on July the 1st, the British commander launches his attack. And his name is General Haig. He will be known as the Butcher. All right? Primarily because of what happens at the Somme. So, he launches an attack on July the 1st. 100,000 British troops after a 8-day barrage of 2 million shells. And the point of shells is really not to kill the Germans, but to destroy barbed wire. In front of these trenches, you could have barbed wire 20 feet thick and 8 feet tall of barbed wire. And the shells are supposed to just destroy this, creating huge gaps in the barbed wire. But the problem is that Haig used shrapnel shells. Shrapnel shells is the shell will explode above ground, spitting shrapnel. This does not destroy barbed wire very well. So, the troops come out on July 1st, 100,000 of them. And guys, by the end of the day, this is the worst day in British military history. 60,000 casualties. 21,000 Brits are killed on July the 1st, 1916, in one day of fighting. They charge across no man's land, the barbed wire is not destroyed, and German artillery and German machine gun fire just rips through them. And basically, the attack stalls. They'll do more attacks over the next several months, but it stalls right there. Think about that for a second. 100,000 troops, 60,000 casualties. Of those 60,000, 21,000 killed. So you have a 60% chance of being wounded. And guys, these are not hangnails being wounded. And that's why he gets the moniker, the Butcher. And so that's where we are right there. But it relieves pressure. Falkenhayn has to take troops up here, and it really does help out the Frenchies down here. The French retake Verdun in December of that year. And thus the 299-day battle is over. 1 million casualties total for both sides. Another 1 million casualties over here. They're done on the Western Front. The French have had it. All right? The British have about had it. It really is terrible. 1916 is clearly the worst. The Russians are forced to attack way over here against the Austro-Hungarians in this area in March of that year to kind of help out Verdun, relieve pressure, to get the Germans to take troops from the west to the east. The Germans lost a massive human wave attack all along this front. It goes up pretty well, but just an example, one night in March, 12,000 Russians freeze to death. The Russians never get metal helmets. The whole war, they never get metal helmets. But it is successful because he launches an attack, not in just one small place. His name is Brusilov, General Brusilov. He launches it across the whole front. And he takes 300,000 Austrian POWs, which is pretty good. But it stalls. The Russians lose another 1 million casualties that year. The Russians are basically almost out of the war in 1916 because of the Brusilov offensive. And this is why you get the Russian Revolution in 1917. So you have the Brusilov offensive, you have the Somme, You have Verdun. Falkenhayn is, of course, fired, and he goes, "Give me another command," and he goes, "Attack Romania." And that's a little. He was the commander of the whole German army. Now he's the command to attack Romania. Kind of a little discouraging, I can imagine. But he goes, and in 1916 he attacks Romania, and he boom, knocks Romania out of the war. And they begin to take the oil in Romania. They begin to take, of course, the wheat. So Falkenhayn does a good job, but it is a little bit of humiliation. Who was put in charge over here? The German effort is Ludendorff and Hindenburg. You might remember them from the 1914 notes, known as what? The Battle of Tannenberg. But I want to move now. Let's go back a little to around the end of May and June. There is a famous battle over here known as the Battle of Jutland. This is the Jutland Peninsula. And so we're going to talk about that for a second. The Battle of Jutland is an interesting battle because we finally see the German Navy. They decide they are going to come out and really try to pick a fight. The British Navy is reading all this information, and they know that this German Navy's coming out here into the North Sea. So the British Navy comes out into the North Sea to meet them. As the Germans don't know that the British know they're coming, so the British are sailing this way, all right, to meet this German naval threat. And then the cryptologist sends a message that, hey, the Germans have turned around. So the British Navy are like, okay, and they keep sailing. So now both navies are sailing toward each other, and they don't know that they're sailing toward each other. They come within 8 miles, they see each other, and they begin to open up. A British battleship goes up in flames. Only 2 out of 1,000 sailors survive. A British officer who loses both legs is able to flood the magazine department to prevent sailing. There are explosions everywhere. The Germans are losing battleships. The British are losing battleships. And the Germans turn around and head back. The British chase them. But the Germans are leading them to the whole German Navy over here. The head battle cruiser of the British sees this massive German fleet, and then he turns around, and the German whole fleet begins to chase. This battle cruiser is leading them to the entire British fleet. 100 ships spread over 20 square miles. And so you have, think about that, 100 ships, 20 square miles is setting up. They set up in battle formation in 15 minutes using flag communication. That, fellas, is how good the British Navy is. Think about that. 20 square miles, 100 ships in formation by the use of flags in 15 minutes. The German Navy, of course, does not know that the whole British fleet is sitting there above the horizon waiting for them, and the German fleet goes right into there. Jellicoe is his name. He is the admiral. Admiral Jellicoe proceeds to cross the T of the Germans. And this, as I'm going to show you in a second, provides a great advantage if you cross the T. It is a great naval kind of maneuver. The Germans pull away, and the British swing around and cross the German T again. When you get your T crossed twice in a battle, you know you're done. And the Germans, of course, head back into port, into their safety. The British are going to lose 3 battle cruisers, 3 battleships, 8 destroyers. The Germans lose 1 dreadnought, 1 battle cruiser, 5 destroyers, and 4 light cruisers. But the significance of this battle is the German Navy, they never come out ever again. And it's over like a span of like a couple days, what I just told you very quickly. Now, this graphic that I found online is a pretty good understanding of what crossing the T can do. Hold on. So you see the 4 ships. I'll leave that right here. Look at how that crossing of the T can easily fire down. So here we go from the beginning. The red being the Germans. All right. So you see the advantage of crossing a T, and the Germans had their T crossed twice. So the sad point of this is where? How do we summarize? Um, really, 1916. We're at the same place that we were at the end of 1914. At the same place we were at the end of 1915. We're at the exact same spot, right? We only move a couple miles here. The Germans have lost over 1 million men. The French have well lost over 500,000. The Russians have lost 1 million. The British have lost 500,000. I'm speaking casualties, which is wounded, killed, and missing. By the way, that's what a casualty is. And they're in the same spot. Romania is out of the war, right? You do get the Battle of Jutland up here, which is a British victory, okay? And this is where we are. But this kind of no supplies are getting to Germany. And in the winter of 1916, 1917, it's called the turnip winter. There's no food. The Germans are literally, the whole nation, the whole country starving to death. When it's a turnip winter, it's not good. The Russians are pretty much done, right? That's why they're going to have revolution. And we're no nearer the end of this war. Nobody knows that this war is going to be over in 1918. You're starting over in 1917 at the exact same spot. But a lot's going to happen in 1917 that we're going to talk about. Now, one interesting thing happens at the end of 1916 is up in the north, up here, 60 tanks go into battle on December the 15th, 1916. Churchill called them land battleships. And he was one of the early pushers of the tank warfare. 60 go into battle, a lot of breakdown. There are 15 people in a tank. These are huge tanks. I'll show you a picture later. And of course, a lot break down, but the Butcher Haig says we need more of these. We can do a lot with them. The Germans in World War II will master this infantry tank attack type thing, and everyone will adopt it. But back then, they just send in tanks unsupported by infantry, which is never a good thing, and it'll take a couple of years to work on that. And that is the end of 1916. A lot happens. Sorry to go so quick, but I hope you are doing well. Miss y'all. See ya.